allow you, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay. All right. So you just need to accept that, and here we go. Okay. So welcome to our webinar about presenting at international conferences in English. I just want to say hi to everyone and welcome. This is our 2-hour webinar about this topic. And I want to say hi to you as we get started. Some of you know me, but if you don't know me, I'm Mary Birch Harmon. I work with Education USA Brazil remotely. I'm actually in the United States right now. So it's wonderful to see you and say hello to you in Brazil. My first name is Mary Birch, and my nickname is MB. So a lot of people just call me MB. You can too. And I'm just so excited to see you today and to work with you this afternoon. Okay? So I'm going to go through the PowerPoints and tell you some of the things that we're going to do in these next 2 hours. So the first hour will be a lot of information that will be shared with you. And the second hour, I hope, will give you the chance to talk to your partner and maybe have the chance to watch a sample presentation and give some feedback or answer some questions about the presentation. Okay? So I always start off with telling you what we're going to be doing during this presentation. So I'm just going to go through some points that I hope we can cover this afternoon. So first of all, we're going to start off with looking at and identifying the different parts of a presentation, the things that you need to pay attention to. And as you're starting to get ready to give your presentation, the things that you need to make sure you include in your presentation. Okay? And also, because I'm a language teacher, that's my focus, I also hope to give you some English phrases that you can use in each part of your presentation, okay? All of this information I will share with you at the end of the presentation. So if you're quickly taking notes, that's okay. But you can also wait and listen and ask questions if you have them. I will share everything with you at the end, okay? All right. So the other piece that we're going to try to look at is just this focus on example phrases that you might say in English as you're getting ready to give a presentation, okay? And so being a language teacher, I want to make sure that you're ready to do that and that you feel comfortable to do that. Okay, so I want to give you some really key phrases that you can use and hopefully make a part of your presentation to make it go more smoothly. Okay. Another thing that we might get to this afternoon is to go over some steps as you start to get ready for your presentation. I have some questions to ask you and then some step-by-step process that might help you as you start to get ready, okay? And then we're going to talk about some mistakes to avoid, some things that you should be very careful of as you're getting ready to give your presentation, and some cultural pieces that you might pay attention to. All right, so the final piece is to look at some sample presentations with a partner and to answer some questions about them and to think about what do you see in the presentation and what do you think about it, okay? So this is my ambitious plan for the next 2 hours. Let's see what we can do today and let's see if we can get through all of this information. All right, so also, if you're new to my teaching style for these webinars, I want this to be like a classroom. So I will share with you a lot of content, but this is also very interactive. You will have a chance to work with a partner, and you are free to ask me questions while we're working today, okay? So this is a small group. You're welcome to turn on your cameras as well, so I can see your face, but also so everyone can see your face. And you're welcome to turn on your microphone if you have a question to ask. If that feels a little bit too much or too scary, please type in the chat and I'll make sure that I look for your questions, okay? Another piece is that we're going to have a chance to work with a partner, I hope, during this next 2-hour session. So feel free to talk to your partner, say hello to them, and answer the questions or work on this little activity together, okay? So I'm imagining that we are in the classroom, in the virtual classroom together, and we're going to learn all of this together, okay? So these are just some of the points I want to point out before we get started. Another piece that I always mention at the beginning of my classes, and I'm also going to mention it at the beginning of this webinar, is that we're in a judgment-free zone, which means if you're worried about your English, please don't be. We are all here to learn, including me, and we are all here to help each other, okay? So if you're feeling like, I can't say what I want to say, that's okay. We're all here to help each other, and you can just put your critic aside and try to be here and try to learn with all of us, okay? Okay, so I'm thinking that maybe you've gotten accepted and you've gotten an email back that says, we've accepted your conference presentation proposal. Yay, right? And so I'm hoping that you're feeling very excited about that. Congratulations, if that's what's happening. But I'm hoping you're not getting to this stage where you're feeling very scared, okay? So maybe it's panic time, and I want to try to help you get a little more relaxed and feel a little more comfortable about what you need to do in your presentation, okay? So congratulations if you got accepted, your proposal accepted. The next step is to get ready and to learn about and prepare for giving your presentation in English, okay? So I just want to make some points about the similarities between writing in English and presenting in English, okay? So I want to point this out because if you submitted a proposal, if you're already doing research, then you have some sense of how we organize our texts in English. And the good news is that these styles for presentations and for writing are very similar, okay? So I just want to make a couple points that will help you as you're thinking about getting ready to prepare for your presentation. All right, so if you've already done research in English and you've already submitted something or published something, these are some of the points that you might have already covered when you submitted your paper or when you've started to work on your research, okay? So in most research papers in English, we do have a title page. We do have an abstract and an introduction. The abstract is always going to give a summary of what your research is about, what your paper is about. Your introduction is going to talk about the topic and tell the reader a little bit more about what you want to talk about. And then it's going to go into the literature review, which shares some of the research that you've been looking at as you've been studying whatever topic it is. And it also gives a background for the reader so they understand more about why you're focusing on whatever research question you have, okay? And then in a research paper, as you probably know, it goes into the research methodology that you use, any of your design that you use, any of your specific questions that you use. So it talks a little bit more about that. And then it goes to the conclusion, which is where you talk about your results. And finally, it gives a list of references that you use for your paper. Okay? So think about that in writing. Okay? Think about that in writing. And I just want to also point out that in English, we also have this standard style when we write, um, which we often talk about the introduction and the thesis statement. Then we move on to the body and the discussion of whatever your topic is, whatever examples you have. And then we also have a conclusion. This is kind of the standard style for both. So the research paper is a little more formal, and this common academic writing style is a little less formal, but it has all of these pieces. If you've studied for the TOEFL test and taken the TOEFL test, some of the writing that you do in the TOEFL test has this format, or they are expecting this format from you. Some kind of introduction with a thesis, a body which has all of your reasons and your support, and then a conclusion where you close or you finish your idea. Okay? So the good news is, if you're moving on to presenting, is that there are these similarities. Okay? And I'm pointing them out to help you think through how similar they are, and also to think through how you can take the format that you use for your writing to actually apply that when you do your presentation. Okay? So just take a look at this chart for a second. This is just like what I just said about academic writing. This is just a chart for that. So we often start with the introduction. We often have body paragraphs with an S, not just one usually. And we often have some kind of conclusion and a reference list. Okay? So think about academic writing. That's what it looks like. All right? All right, so let's start to transition to what a speech might look like. Okay? And the good news again is that it has a similar format. All right? So we're going to talk a little bit about that today, and we're going to talk about how you can put your speech or your presentation into a nice order, a logical order, so that your audience can understand what you're talking about. Okay? So just looking at this chart, you'll see that there is a beginning with the introduction. There is a body part where we talk about the examples, we talk about our research in more detail, we talk about more information about our topic, and then there always is some kind of conclusion where you close or you finish up what you're talking about so the audience knows that you're coming to the end. All right? So just looking at those two different styles, you can probably see how similar they are. Okay? All right. So I'm hoping that you're now feeling like, yay, we can do it, right? We can transfer our skills from writing over to our skills for actually giving a presentation. The format is very, very similar. Okay? So just keep that in mind. Okay? All right. So I want to move on to starting to talk about what you need to include in your presentation and what you need to focus on. And like I said at the beginning, I will also talk to you about what language or what suggestions I'm making about language of phrases or sentences that you can use in each different part of the presentation. Okay? So the typical structure, all right, think about what we just said about writing. The typical structure for a presentation looks something like this, okay? I'm going to point out 5 different points that you need to try to include in your presentation and make sure that each part is really strong, okay? So we often, or always, I would say always, start with some kind of greeting, okay? And then we move right into the introduction. From there, we're going to move into the body where we're talking about our main points. and then we go into some kind of conclusion. The difference from writing here is that we then have a question and answer session at the end. So just trying to keep these ideas in your mind. There are 5 different pieces that we're going to go through this afternoon, and we're going to think about how we can talk through each one of them. Okay? So I'm just going to come back to you for a moment. How's everybody doing? You okay? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. So we're just going to keep going. And if you're just coming in, please don't panic if I'm going through this information quickly. I will share a document with you at the end, which has everything on it. Okay? Okay, so think about these 5 different points, these 5 different parts that you need to include in your presentation. All right? And what I'd like to do is go through each one and give you some language that you can use to practice, and give you some phrases that you might use when you're getting ready to give your presentation. Okay, so we're going to start with a greeting. All right. And I'm also thinking that, while we're doing this, you're also thinking, you're also watching me give a presentation in English, right? So you can decide at the end if I hit all of these different parts, okay? All right, these 5 different parts. Okay, so the greeting. You're going to say hello to the audience, all right? This is a very typical way that we start off. I'm sure it's very similar in Portuguese. You're just going to say hello to the audience, tell them a little bit about your background, okay? So you watched me say something at the beginning. I introduced myself, right? And then I told you a little bit about what I do, okay? So if it helps you, you can say, hi, I'm Mary Birch Harmon. You can say your title if that works for you. And then you can tell a little bit about your background, okay? Where you work, where you are right now, because everything is virtual right now, so you can talk a little bit about that, okay? So you might say something like this, all right? So hi, good morning, good afternoon, whatever it is. My name is blah, 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 and I'm a student, I'm a researcher, I'm a teacher, I'm a professor, whatever you want to say, and you can say where you work if you're comfortable with that. And then you can say in what area you're working in, okay? So this is probably the easiest part of the presentation, right? To introduce yourself and say hello. Okay. All right. From there, you're going to move into the introduction. I just want to point out a couple different points about the introduction that you need to pay attention to. All right. So when you start the introduction, one important thing is to try to grab the audience's attention. So think about, in writing, we do a similar thing. We talk about hooking the reader, right? So we're going to try to do the same thing in a presentation. We're going to try to hook the reader, hook the listener, and see if they can continue with us, stay interested in our topic by what we say at the very beginning. Okay? That's an important part to note in the introduction. The next thing that you're going to do in the introduction is you're going to start to talk about your topic. All right? So you might talk very general. It depends on the time that you have. You might talk very general and then get specific. Or if you only have a short time to talk, you're going to go right into the specific topic, okay? So you might then talk about what the issue is or the challenge is, okay? So you're talking about why you got into this research and what was the issue that you were trying to solve, okay? So talking a little bit about the problem or a little bit about what you were looking at in your research, okay? So 2 things. Remember, in the introduction, you're trying to grab the reader's attention and you're trying to show them or start to introduce the topic. And depending on the time that you have, you're going to start to bring in some key points about what you're going to talk about today. For some people, they like to start with what was the problem, and they start right with that and they start talking about it. Usually that problem leads to what the research is or was. Okay? All right. So you're also going to talk a little bit about what's happening in the current research. All right. So if you jump right into your introduction and you start to talk about this topic, you want to also show them, the audience, that you also have read the current research, that you know what you're talking about. Okay. So you want to start to bring in what's happening in the current research. Okay. All right, from there, you're going to talk about what your presentation purpose is and why it's important to you. All right? So you're starting to move into why you got interested in this topic. Why do you want to give this presentation? You start to make these points and you start to give more details about it. Okay? And another thing, we talk about this a little bit, and maybe you watched me just do it, but we say this phrase, you have to set the stage. And what that means is you have to tell the audience what you want them to do or what the parameters are for your presentation. Okay? So you might talk about what's the time limit. You might talk about how you want the audience to interact with you. You might also talk about if you're giving them a document or a handout at the end, you might talk about when you're sharing this information. Okay? So if you're in an in-person presentation, you might say that right away. Sometimes I've been to presentations and people give me the handout as soon as I sit down. Okay? Or if it's virtual and you don't want to do that right away, you can tell the audience that you're going to give them something at the end. Okay? So think about how do you want the audience to interact with you, and when are you going to give the information to them, and what's your time limit? Okay? You want to talk to the audience because you want them to know that this is how it's going to go. All right? And you want to give them kind of the limitations of what you're going to do in your presentation. Okay, so this is a style point. It might be a little bit cultural, but it's also a stylistic thing that you can pay attention to. So often people share a personal story. They start to talk about why they got interested in this research because of whatever happened, because something happened and they wanted to research it more, or they wanted to find out what the solution was for that problem. Okay? So you can do that too. It's a style point. You can decide if that's how you want to do it. And you can share a personal story with your audience to kind of grab them and bring them into what you're talking about. Okay? So you can think about, this is just a couple questions for you, but you can think about, what do you want the audience to know or learn by the end of your presentation? Okay? That might help you as you're thinking about and you're trying to prepare, like, what's my purpose? What do I want them to walk away with? Okay? If you start to think about that, it helps to shape your presentation and what you're going to share with them. Okay? So 2 points there. You can think about telling your personal story if you're comfortable with that. And you can also think about, what do you want them to walk away with? When they walk away from your presentation, they can say, I learned blah, blah, blah. All right? Can you think of what that answer is? If you can, it might help you focus how you're preparing your presentation. Okay? Okay. So I'd also like to share with you some phrases in English of how you might start. All right? So you can use a hook. You can ask the audience a question. Okay? Did you ever wonder why blah, blah, blah? You can ask them another question like, how many people here have done whatever, given a presentation before, whatever it is, okay? Or isn't it crazy that blah, blah, blah? And you can think about what you want to say in that question. You could also tell a story, all right? You can make it a personal story if that feels comfortable to you. Or you can simply put up an image related to your research or related to your presentation and start with that, okay? Remember, you're trying to grab their attention, so you want them to stay engaged with you the whole time that you're giving this presentation. So you can think about what's the best way to do that when you're starting your introduction, all right? So then you're going to keep going. You go into the next part, which is talking about what your topic is today, all right? So some of the presentations, the examples that we're going to look at today, you might hear them say something like this. Today, I would like to talk to you about, and they're going to say what the topic is, okay? So remember, this is after they hooked the audience, after they've told the story, and now they're saying very directly, this is what the topic is about, all right? Or they might say, they might give more details and say specifically, I will be focusing on, and they're going to give more information, okay? And finally, they might say something like, the reason why this is of interest, or the reason why this is important to me, and they might start giving some more details, okay? So these are just suggestions. These are suggestions of how you might go from this personal story at the beginning to go to the next part, okay? All right. So as you keep going, remember we're still in the introduction, okay? You want to kind of set this stage for them, set the parameters for them. You also want to tell them, like, this is what we're going to, today I'd like to talk to you about this, all right? And you're going to give them whatever the main points are. Once you get to the body, you're giving them more details, more examples, more research, whatever it is. But at the beginning, you need to introduce the topic and you need to tell them a little bit about what you'd like to cover about it, okay? So you could say something like, in today's discussion about blah, 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 I will be exploring, and you say what the points are, okay? So you can tell them up front that this is what you're going to talk about. And you might also add this piece. So think back to the question. What do you want your audience members to walk away with? All right. What idea did they learn from you? What question do you want them to walk away and try to answer? Okay. So you can talk to them. You can say to them, by the end of this presentation, I hope you have a better understanding of, and you say it. Okay. I did not do that at the beginning of this presentation, but let's say it now. I hope you have a better understanding of how to give a presentation in English. Okay. All right. So then this piece about setting the stage. All right. So you need to talk about, you need to give them like what's happening, how you want them to interact with you. Okay. So during this 2-hour presentation, I would request that you please wait until the end of the presentation to ask questions, if that's what you want, okay? If not, like I said, you can ask your audience, or you can say to your audience, please ask me a question when you don't understand, or please raise your hand and ask a question when you don't understand or have a question, okay? And then you also want to tell them what information are you sharing with them, and tell them what that's going to look like, okay? So I'll be sharing my information at the end of this presentation or at the halfway mark, and I hope that you'll pay attention until then, and then I will share my resources with you, whatever it is, okay? So you can tell them this. You need to tell the audience this so that they know what's happening. And because you are the one with a microphone or you are the one speaking, then you need to give this to set the stage and give them all this information so they know what to do. Okay? All right. So I like to think of giving a presentation. I talk a little bit about this with writing as well, but I like to think about when you give a presentation, you're taking your audience on a journey, okay? And you need to make sure that you tell them where to go, what to pay attention to, okay? So you have to give them the map. You have to give them what the key points are. All right. And you have to tell them up front, it's going to look like this, and this is what we're going to do in this presentation. Okay. So you want to engage them. You want them to come with you on the journey, and you want to make sure that they know what points they need to pay attention to, what points you're going to cover, when you're going to share information with them, how long the presentation is, whatever it is, you need to say that, okay? And be very clear with them about this information. Okay, so we're moving on to the body of your presentation. In the body of your presentation, this is where you start to share all of your examples, all of your supporting ideas for why you're doing this research. This is where you start to share all these important pieces and give more information about whatever your research is about. So, in this part, usually the body gets to be the longest part of your presentation, okay? Again, all of this will depend on how much time you have, okay? But usually the body, think about in writing, the introduction is only one paragraph, right? Usually. And then the body has more paragraphs in it, and the conclusion is usually only one paragraph in some cases, okay? So think about the body of a presentation is going to give a lot of information that's very helpful for your listeners and very helpful for them to understand what your research is about, okay? So you can share your research questions, you can share information about your design or whatever methodology you use, you can share some of the raw data, and you can start to share what your conclusions were. What did you learn? Okay? So the body kind of goes in that order that you're giving more information, you're sharing more about the research that you did, whatever methodology you used, and you're starting to tell them what your conclusions were, okay? So the body it's a really important part of your presentation because it helps the audience to understand why you did the research that you did. Okay. Another point is that you can also add any key points from your study or any supporting evidence or examples that you have. All right? So think of the body as it's kind of chunky. It's an important part, okay? And depending on your time, if you don't have a lot of time for your presentation, if it's only 3 minutes long, if it's only 5 minutes long, then you're going to have to think about what's the most important thing for me to share in the body that's going to support what I'm saying at the beginning. Okay, so this is just a small thing, but I think it's important. Whatever you say you're going to do at the beginning, make sure you do it. Okay? So if you start off your presentation and say, today I'm going to talk to you about blah, 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 okay? You need to go through your presentation and make sure you cover those points, all right? So think about my presentation right now. I started off with the agenda. This is what I want to cover today. So you need to make sure that I need to make sure that I cover those points while we're together today. Okay? The same for you. If you're using PowerPoint, if you're using some kind of slides, whatever you say at the beginning, this is what I'm going to focus on. This is what I'm going to do. You need to make sure you do it. Okay? As best as you can. Okay? All right. So another style point. We're now in the body part of the presentation, another style point is to think about, do you want to say your most important point at the beginning, or do you want to save it for the very end? Again, this can depend on time, the time that you have to give the presentation, but you can think about when you would like to share your most important point or finding of your research. Okay? So, I want to go through some phrases for you to help you get started when you're talking about the body part of your presentation. All right. So you might say something like, you want to start by introducing the first point. You might say something like, I want to begin by discussing, and you say whatever it is. Okay? And then by doing this research, I first discovered, this is another way you could start. Or to illustrate this topic, I'd like to begin by discussing, and you're going to say what it is. Okay? So these are just, you're moving now from the introduction into starting to talk about these key research points that you want to make, or these key supporting details that you want to make sure you cover in the body part of your presentation. All right. So as you keep going, you're going to add more points, you're going to add more information so that the audience understands what you're talking about. Okay? This is a common phrase, as you can see, and then you give a short summary of what you just talked about. You might also say, next, my research led me to, and you're going to tell them what you learned, or where it led you, or what next steps you took when you did this research. Okay? You could also say my next, second, third, whatever point it is. You can keep using this phrase as a simple way to introduce your next topic. Or you can get towards the end, you can say, I talked about this, now I'd like to move on to this. Okay? These are really simple ways that we keep the conversation going and we keep the presentation going by adding these different phrases. Okay. So just some language around giving examples, if that's part of what happens in the body of your presentation. These are just some phrases that you might use to talk about these different examples. There are a couple here. I think that's it. Okay. So just another way to say, for example, you can say something like, to give you an idea, or as proof, or suppose that, to illustrate, imagine, whatever it is. Okay? So you can change your language a little bit to have some variety and to show the audience different ways that you're going to present these different examples. Okay? All right. So I also thought I might include some information about how to clarify a point. And what you're doing is you're simply giving more information to be really clear about whatever point you're making. Okay? So you can say something like, in other words, what I mean is, to be clear, this means whatever. Let me explain in more detail. Let me put it another way. These are just ways to clarify or to say an idea again. And it also sometimes acts as a way to highlight this point in more detail. Okay. So then you're moving on to your final point, whatever that is. Okay? You're trying to get to the end. And you're going to, if this is your most important point, you might share that. So my final point from my research is, or my most important point from my research is, okay? And you're going to come to this last point. You're using this language to tell the audience that we're coming to the end. This is what I'm finally saying. This is the point that I finally want to make. Okay? So you're coming to this last point. And then you're going to say, or you could say something like, so I talked about blah, now I'd like to talk about this. Okay? Or I'd like to finish with this point. Okay? All right. So from the body, from making this final point, whatever it is in the body of your presentation, you're going to come to the conclusion, all right? The conclusion is really important because it sums up your main ideas and it sums up any key ideas that you wanted to share with your audience. Now remember, you might have been thinking about, what do I want my audience to walk away with? What do I want them to learn? Okay? So your conclusion's kind of starting to get to that point. You're starting to kind of bring all these ideas together. So sometimes when a presenter comes to the end of their presentation, they might do something called a call to action, or they might ask the audience to do something, or they might say what's next in their research. Okay? I think personally, good presenters make you or ask you to walk away and keep thinking about their topic, right? Because they ask you a question. They ask you like, well, what do you think about blah? You know, now that you know this, what do you think about this? Okay? And that's a way for you to keep engaging with the topic and keep thinking about, you know, whatever research they were talking about. I think it's an interesting way to end. Okay? Don't skip your conclusion. It's a very important part, and it's a way for you to reinforce whatever your ideas are. Okay? So don't get to the end and just say, okay, thanks, bye. You know, you want to get to this point and you want to wrap up or summarize what you've talked about so the audience knows that you're coming to the end, but also for you to conclude all of these ideas and to finish them up together. Okay? So like I said about this cultural point, and it's sometimes called this call to action, I've seen it much more commonly. It seems to be kind of a way for presenters to end their speeches more often these days. But anyway, it's a chance to ask your audience to do something, to take an action, okay? To call their representative and try to make a change, to go to a website and fill out a survey, whatever it is. You want to keep engaging the audience and ask them to do something, okay? That way they will keep thinking about your topic and they'll keep thinking about your research, okay? And maybe they have some ideas for you, or maybe they have some thoughts as they continue to think about it. Okay, so let's think about the language of how to finish, okay? So you might say something like, as I come to the end of my presentation, today I said blah, blah, blah. I told you about blah, 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 whatever it is. And you're going to try to conclude what you talked about. Or you could say something like this. This is a bit longer, but you can say, as we come to a close today, here's what I set out to do. And what you set out to do is, what was your purpose? You know, I wanted to share with you about whatever it is, okay? And then you're going to ask them this thing. This is what I hope. This is what I really hope you will walk away with, all right? I hope you'll come away with more ideas. I hope you'll keep thinking about whatever the topic is, okay? So you can tell them this because you're coming to this end and you're trying to finish up what you're talking about, all right? And we use this language to really signal to the audience that this is the end. This is how we're going to finish up, okay? So this piece about asking them to take an action, which is becoming more and more common, is to literally ask them. So to close or to finish, I'd like to ask you to do one thing. And you ask them to do whatever it is. Go home and talk to your family about whatever it is. Or try to start doing this, you know, the next time you go to wherever, okay? And once you have that seed planted, you're engaging them in your research outside of your presentation, And that's what you want. You want them to keep thinking about it, okay? Or you could say, and finally, before you leave the conference today, please take 2 minutes to and ask them to take an action. Whatever you want them to do, okay? Be creative. You can ask them to do something that will keep them engaged with your topic. It might also grow in a different way that they come up with some questions for you, okay? Okay. So we're coming to the very end, and right as you're finishing up your conclusion, one thing that's important to do is to say thank you to your audience, all right? Thank you, something as simple as thank you for listening to my presentation today, okay? Or you might say what your contact information is, or how they can reach you, or where your website is, okay? And you might also, again, tell them how they can engage with you. Please contact me if you'd like to discuss this topic more. Please contact me with your questions. Whatever it is, you can talk to them and tell them how you'd like them to use your information. Okay? All right, so we're coming to the last part of your presentation. Woohoo! We're almost there. So the last part of your presentation is going to be something called the question and answer section. All right? Most of the time when I present about this, students say, no, MB, no. We don't want to get to the question and answer section. But let's see what the importance of it is. Okay? So the question and answer section is going to give you a chance to get some feedback on your research. It's also going to give you a chance to answer questions about anything that you said. And it allows you to engage with the audience and see how they interpreted what you were talking about and see how they're thinking about it now. Okay? It can also help you, so use it as a way to help you. It can help you as you start to think about any revisions or anything that you need to change while you're giving your presentation. It can also help you as you think about what future direction you'd like to go in for your research. Okay? So you can think about, you can use this question and answer time as a way for you to learn. All right. Yes, it's stressful. I know. Okay. But it's a way for you to learn and get feedback on what you just told them. Okay. So think about it as a way for you to gather more information. Okay. All right. So the key point here is not to panic if you can. Okay. And be very honest. All right. So research can be very broad. It can also be super, super specific, which means you might not know about this other piece, okay? And you can be honest with the audience and tell them that, all right? So if the audience member, maybe a fellow researcher, maybe your professor, maybe someone else in the room says, hey, MB, what about this? Why didn't you research this? And you can simply say, I'm going to give you some phrases, but you can be honest and say what your research was about. And say that that was not your focus, whatever it is. Okay, so I'm going to give you some phrases to do that. Here we go. Okay. So you could say something like, and this is really common, this is not like just trying to deflect it, this is really common, people do say this, okay? So that's a really interesting question. Here's what I know from my research, okay? So you can focus it because this is what you looked at, and you can talk about or say back to them, I didn't focus on that in my research, okay? You can also think about saying something like, that's an interesting idea. I haven't looked into it yet, but I hope to in the future. I want to learn more about that topic. You can say anything that helps you to kind of engage in this conversation. Okay? And you could also throw it back to the audience member. You can ask them, do you have any suggestions for how I could do that? Do you have any suggestions for how I could learn more about that? And then you have this professional exchange. Okay? Or you could say something like, it may be because, but blah, blah, blah. I'm still looking into that. You could try to give them a reason. Okay? So just keep that in mind. Your research, whatever you're presenting about, be honest. Tell the audience if you don't know the answer. You are not expected to know everything. You are not expected to know everything about your topic. Okay? Okay. So I just thought I would share this. I think for the most part, I've presented at a couple different conferences. For the most part, people are not there to judge you, okay? They are there to learn from you or learn with you, okay? So when you answer their questions, or if you don't have an answer for them, like I said, just be very honest with them about that, okay? And if you start panicking, like, oh my gosh, why didn't I know that? I forgot this, okay? It's okay. It's very natural. People who have presented at conferences, they know how stressful it is. They know, okay? They also know that they don't know everything about their topic, okay? So if someone asks you a question and you think like, oh gosh, I didn't research that, or I forgot my notes about that topic, or whatever, you can just be very honest with them and say that. You can ask them a question back. You can start to build this professional relationship where you learn together, okay? But for the most part, people who come to hear your presentation, I would say 95%, maybe 99%, they're there to learn. They are not there to judge you. So going to the question and answer section, you want to make sure that you do that so that you can learn with them and you can learn from them. Okay? Noemi, did you have a question you want to say? No? You okay? Okay. No problem. Okay. Okay. So just keep this in mind. Okay? I've been to international presentations and people start to panic and they get to the question and answer and they're like, oh, sorry, we don't have any time. And they just cut it off. Okay? So, yeah. And sometimes you're right. Yeah, you're right, Paula. Sometimes people just come to see you. They come to learn from you or to know what you're about. Okay? So take that as a compliment. Take it as a learning experience, whatever happens. Okay? And take it as a way for you to grow your research. If you don't know the answer to the question, you'll know the answer next time. Okay? If that's not what your research is about, tell them. I didn't focus on that. I didn't look at that. I didn't have time. I didn't have the funding. Whatever it is, I looked at this, and this is what my presentation is about. Okay? You have the right to say that, and it's completely 100% okay. Okay? All right. So remember, in this presentation, you're taking them on this journey with you, hopefully. And by telling them all these different points, you're giving them the map. You're giving them the key points that they need to pay attention to. Okay? Okay. Any questions? How are you doing? Hi.
Hi, MB. Can you
Hi.
hear me?
Yeah, hi.
I'm sorry, I'm too late for the section.
It's okay. No problem. No
I
problem.
set my alarm for 7, but it was for 5. Sorry, really sorry for that.
Hey, it's okay.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So I'm gonna share all the information at the end, Adele, so
Okay,
you can make sure that you have all the information. I'll make sure that you have it. Okay.
okay. Thanks a lot.
And also, this is being recorded, so it will go onto Education USA's website.
Uh,
Okay.
Amazing. I'm going to see that
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
because I need the information that you shared with us today, but I messed everything up.
It's okay. No problem.
Oh, okay. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. Paula, do you have a question? Go ahead.
In fact, it's not a question; it's a comment.
Okay.
Um, when I was doing my masters, I came across a lot of books that teach you. There's a professional in the United States. I don't know if you heard of her, called Nancy Duarte.
Oh, no, I don't. No, go ahead.
I can share you the information later. She has a book called Slideology. So apart from all this knowledge that you gave us, taught us today, there is the difficult part of creating the slides and speaking alongside the slides. So there is a lot of knowledge about the amount of information you put on the slides. It can be too much. So that I came across all these books. But I have a quick question, MB. Is this the focus of this presentation is about academic presentations, not commercial presentations, right?
Right, academic presentations, right. At international conferences. Yes. Yeah. 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 And Paula, I'm going to talk a little bit about how to organize your slides in a moment. Okay. Just some suggestions for you. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up.
Thanks a lot.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah. Yeah. So I see a question in the chat. Do I have any advice if you're getting shy or feel very nervous? I'm going to make some suggestions, Diane, and um, I think the main thing is to practice a lot and to maybe give the presentation to your friends or to your family or to get more comfortable. Okay. I always get nervous when I give a presentation, but what I try to do is use my slides to help me know what information is coming next. Okay, so I organize them in a way so that I know, oh, right, I'm going to talk about this, this, and this. And I practice, and I try to make sure that I'm comfortable with the topic so that I can talk about it as smoothly as possible. Yeah, 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 yeah. That was a good question. Yeah.
I say something.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sometimes it helps when we have somebody to share with us the presentation. We do that a lot on international conferences for Education USA. So we work in with another person, and then if you get nervous, the other person can take it and continue and comment
Oh,
and
okay.
go together with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Yeah. So I've presented with a couple friends before, and I was the one that got the most nervous, and I started talking like 100 miles an hour, and it was terrible. um, I tell myself now that I have to take a deep breath, that I have to slow down. And my friends in that situation could help me. However, we all had different parts to talk about. And I talked, I said all of my 10 minutes of information in like 1 minute. I mean, it was crazy. So So I've practiced more and tried to, calm myself down so that I have a better sense. Yeah, yeah. But that's really helpful, Noemi. Yeah, go ahead. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
and there is something I try to do is to memorize the first phrases I'm gonna say and practice those phrases a lot, like 700 times,
Right,
because then I can, you know, get myself comfortable with that.
right, right. Yeah, yeah. So I also think in doing it in another language, it's helpful, just like you said, Noemi, to have some phrases like to go back to, like what trying to say is, or back to my point, or whatever it is, some helpful things to kind of help you stay on track. And if you get caught up or you get too nervous, some phrases that, like you said, if you say them over and over again, then they become more natural. That will help you to stay and try to stay calm. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
Like some flashcards for each of the slides I'm gonna use with some of the main sentences I should start with.
Right,
And then I just take a quick look, and I will remember.
right,
Because if I get panicked, I know what to
right,
do.
right, right, right. So I think sometimes with virtual presentations, you can use the wall or the place behind your computer to help you, because you could put key phrases there that no one would see, right? And you can help yourself to remember. Yeah, I've done that before. It a little bit stressed me out more because I kept thinking like where what do I have to look at, but it helped me remember what the key points were. Yeah, yeah, thanks for sharing that.
MB, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because what do you think about those TED presentations? I think they have about 15 or 16 minutes.
Yeah,
They're not exactly academic, but they have some topics to grab your attention, keep people listening to you. And another thing, they don't have too much slides.
right, right. So that's a really good question. And Paulo, some of the examples today that we're going to look at in this next hour are actually TED Talks. So you can choose with your partner if you want to watch them. Okay. Um, but I think TED Talks, the thing with TED Talks is they are very polished. And if you understand what I mean, is they are very perfect. Usually when they're getting up, they probably practice that presentation 100 times. Okay. And so they are with the microphone, they talk very easily for the most part. Um, so I think the thing is, TED Talks, I think, also can be academic, not all of them, but some of them can be academic. So um, they're good examples if you look at how they're structured. Okay. And if you think about how they start, how they introduce the topic, how they talk about it in the body, and then how they give the conclusion, we're going to actually do that today. You're going to have time to practice looking at an example and then answering some questions today. Okay?
May I say something?
Yeah, sure.
That I really think it is interesting that in the US, you have like a tradition on getting better for presentations like Toastmaster clubs, TED Talks,
Right.
regional TED Talks, and we don't have that here.
Right.
So some people think it's you're talented or not. I myself used to think about that, and I realized that I was completely wrong. It's
Uh-huh.
about practicing.
Okay.
And yeah, that's what I wanted to point out.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And Jose, I see your question um, about doing a pitch. for a project or a proposal, I will find it for you, but I have a suggestion for a link that you could watch that would help you think of maybe the answers for, I think there are 4 questions that might help you to organize that. Okay, I'll make sure I put that in the chat for you before we leave. Okay, yeah, thanks for your question. All right. Okay, so yeah, no problem. So what I'd like to do next is cover a couple other points, okay? Some things to pay attention to, some things to avoid. And then I'd like to give you time to say hello to your partner and to look at some sample presentations, okay? So we're going to go back to the PowerPoint and let's just see what we're going to do next. Okay, so this will all also be on the handout, okay? But I also want to give you some suggestions or some advice as you start to get ready to give your presentation, okay? So one question that comes up a lot when you give your presentation is, what's your point? What's the purpose, okay? Are you trying to perform something, give them a demonstration? Are you training someone? Are you teaching them about something? Are you persuading them about a topic? Are you trying to convince them of something? Or are you trying to sell something? Okay. So if you think about those 4 points, presentations often kind of fall into these different categories. Okay. So I would say, as you start off, you can think about, what is my purpose? A lot of times for academic presentations, you're often trying to show them something or convince them of some new research, okay? Or simply tell them, like, just be demonstrative about a new technique that you're using or what you've been doing in your classroom, whatever it is, okay? So please try to think about what your purpose is as you're thinking about your presentation. Okay. The next point is, if you know me and you've been in my classes before, I talk about this a lot, okay? This is not my idea. It comes from this book. I've taught about writing. Adele, you were in my writing class, right? It's called The Writing Revolution. This idea, thinking about topic, audience, and purpose, is really key to this book. And I've applied it to also giving presentations and also to speaking, okay? So the idea behind it is that you need to think about, what is your topic? What do you want to talk about? Who is your audience? Who are you speaking to? And what do they know about the topic? Okay? You need to understand that if you have no idea who your audience is, then your information might change. How you present it might change. Okay? And thirdly, you're going to think about, what is your purpose? Okay? So what do you want the audience to understand by the end of this presentation? Or what is your main point? Okay? And I've added this is not from this book, but the last piece is about size. And what that means is, a 3-minute presentation is very different from a 40-minute presentation, okay? So if you can think about or know ahead of time what is the size, it's going to help you organize your ideas, okay? And I have a reference to this on the handout, to this particular book, which might help you as you're thinking through. Okay, another point is to really ask yourself, why am I making this presentation? Okay, what do I want the audience to understand? Okay, I had to do this for myself before I give any webinar presentation. What do I want you as my audience to walk away with? What do I want you to understand? I ask myself that, okay? What's my main message, okay? And what are 3 points about my topic that I want my audience to walk away with, okay? So I'm telling you these questions to think about as you're starting to get ready for your presentation. If you can write down these answers, it will help you as you're thinking. And what does it do? It helps you to focus what you're going to say. All right? So I think when you're writing about something, you have a lot of power because you can control what the audience or what the reader learns about a topic by how you present it. The same with giving a presentation. You have the power to focus where the audience is listening about this information or what they're learning from you about this information. So you have the power to focus what you want them to know, okay? This doesn't mean power in a bad way. It simply means that you are the driver. You're showing them. You're saying, come go on this journey with me, and you're trying to explain what points you want to make, okay? So you might also then get into outlining your ideas and thinking about what your hook is and how you're going to give your conclusion, okay? So your hook at the beginning, your conclusion at the end, you can think about how they go together. And you can start to build your presentation within this time frame. So think about what's the size? How many minutes do I have? You can think about how many minutes do I want for question and answers? Okay, so you can think about all of these pieces and then start to map out what your presentation is going to look like. All right, so as Paulo was suggesting, it is difficult to think about what goes on your slides. And maybe you can tell me, MB, it was too much information. So death by PowerPoint means that you just put everything on your slides and you just read it, okay? I think you don't want to read your PowerPoint. You don't want to read everything. You want to talk to the audience, okay? And like Noemi said, she practices enough so many times that she knows what she's going to say, all right? You want to think about what's important to share on your PowerPoint and only put that, okay? I think personally with teaching, it's a little different. I find myself putting a lot of information, as you can see, on the PowerPoint. Teaching is a little different, but you can think about how to stage it and how to include different information. This is a suggestion. This was by someone who worked at Apple, that this is the 10-20-30 rule. Does anyone know what this rule is? The 10-20-30 the 10-20-30 rule is that you will only have 10 slides. I broke this rule. Okay. You only have 10 slides with 20 font for a 30-minute presentation. I did not do that. Okay. But you can think about what you're putting on your slides and what's important to share. Okay? Yeah. Yeah. And Carlos, that's a really good point. Right. It's PowerPoint, not power text. Yeah. So think about if you can say something and you just want to highlight what the points are, you can do that. Okay? All right. Another thing is to try to keep it simple. If you're going to be talking about a lot of what is on your PowerPoint, or you give them a picture and you're going to talk about it, you can do that as well. Okay? So think about how you can simplify the information that you're sharing. Think about how you can get it down to whatever these main points are. Okay? I would say try to proofread each slide. all right? Sometimes I go back and I think, oh my gosh, I see a big spelling mistake, or I see that I missed something. You have to proofread what you're presenting because it's a way for you to share this information, and you want to make sure that it's really strong. Only use a video when it enhances what your point is, okay? Some people like to throw in a video and then we did this and then we talked about this and blah, you know, and you don't want to lose the audience. You want to keep them with you. You want to make sure that they're following you and they know what you're talking about. So only think of inserting or adding a video when it helps, not to just be a small point that doesn't matter. Okay? Okay. So I'm going to make some suggestions, and then I'm going to make some suggestions about virtual presentations, and then we'll go on to some partner work. Okay. So as you're preparing, if this helps you, you can watch your timing, which means using an actual timer and seeing how you're talking through each part. All right? If you're presenting with a fellow colleague or with a friend, and you each have a certain part to do, make sure, like, don't be like me, make sure that you pay attention to how much time you have. And make sure you're very clear with that, okay? Also to pay attention to, if the conference that you're presenting at says these are the rules, okay? You can only do this, you can only use this kind of PowerPoint, you can only have 10 slides, whatever it is, pay attention. Pay attention. It will save you a lot of stress if you pay attention and you do those things that they ask you to do. Because you don't want to spend a lot of time on your presentation and, oh, now it's perfect. You send it to them and they say it's too big. Or you send it to them and they say it's too many slides. Okay? And you don't want to get into that because then that causes the next level of stress, right? Because then you have to change everything. Okay? So if they say you only have 30 minutes, the last 5 minutes will be question and answer. So you really only have 25 minutes. And then they tell you someone will introduce you. So maybe that will be 5 minutes. So you really only have 20 minutes. You have to pay attention to all these pieces. Usually in conferences, they are very, very specific as to what you can do. Okay? So pay attention, make sure you note it, because it will help you as you get ready. And like Noemi said, you should practice as many times as you can. Let your friends listen to you, talk to yourself, record yourself with your phone, whatever it is. You will start to notice the mistakes that you're making, if you are. You'll also start to notice what you missed and what you need to correct, okay? I presented virtually recently and I practiced with my friends, and what I wanted to do would not have worked. I'm so glad we practiced because it helped me understand what would work, okay? So use your friends, use your family to help you. Okay. All right. So some tips for successful delivery. I like to think of a presentation as this way to connect with your audience. All right. You don't want to be talking over them. You don't want to be talking under them. You want to be talking to them. You want to make a connection. All right. Why are you giving this presentation? Ties into connecting with your audience and having this exchange with them, all right? A presentation is kind of like a formal conversation, okay? A little different. You are the one doing most of the talking. However, you want to share with your audience what these key points are. You want to share with your audience why you're excited about your research, okay? So just keep that in mind. You want to make this connection. You want to make it personal if you can, okay? That will connect the audience to you very strongly. You can also link your theme together. So if you're talking about all these different points, you can try to link them together. This helps the audience understand why you did this, then this, then this, or why you talked about this, then this, and then this, okay? You want to make that connection for them. And finally, you should try to be really direct. And why do you need to do that? Because you want to boil down, you want to get down to what is your point? Why are you talking about this topic? Okay, so you want to get down to what those points are and be very clear with them. And I would encourage you to be confident. If you've been accepted at an international conference, woohoo, that's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so they are very interested, the conference presenters, the conference as a whole, they are very interested in what you have to say. As nervous or as scared as you may feel, just remember the audience members are there to learn. They want to learn from you, okay? So think about that. This is an opportunity for you to share your information, to share your passion. And so you can think about, if you can think about it in that way, it will help you to kind of get over this anxiousness and be excited about what you're doing. Okay. So I just want to make some points about when you're actually giving your presentation. You need to think about your body language. Okay? You don't want to be turned away from the camera. You want to make sure you're looking at the audience. Remember, you're trying to make this connection with them. Okay? So you want to face them, talk to them. If it helps you, if you're in-person presentation, you can start to make eye contact with different people. You can use that as a way to ground you and help you connect with these different people. I would say start strong. Go with your strongest idea. Share with them why you're passionate about whatever you're talking about. Okay? Don't just start a conversation, well, you know, I was talking about blah, blah, blah. No, you want to say, I'm here to tell you today about whatever it is. Okay? And you want to start strong. That way you connect with your audience and you grab their attention. Okay? If you can, like, don't listen to me because I rushed before, but if you can, don't rush. Don't talk quickly. Okay? If you're running out of time and you think, oh my gosh, I didn't get to my main point and now we only have 2 minutes left and what am I going to do? You are the one that's talking, so you can say, you know what? We're going to run out of time. I want to make my most important point now, and you're going to just say that. You're going to share that with the audience, okay? If you practice, it will help you not to rush, okay? Everyone runs into a situation where they start to run out of time. So what you want to do is try to get to whatever your main point is and make sure that that's clear, okay? This is just a comment to dress professionally. Consider any cultural aspects that are there, okay? If you're traveling to another country, you need to think about how they dress, how they present themselves, and be very respectful of that, okay? And I would suggest having a backup plan. If your computer doesn't work, if your PowerPoint doesn't load or something, you need to have what the backup plan is. Meaning, you need to know what your presentation is about enough to talk about it without your PowerPoint. Okay? You need to know what your ideas are to make sure that you can do that. Okay? That's why people are going to come and listen to you. Okay. So for virtual presentations, which are more and more common now, okay? You can use the same format. Okay, you can look at what I'm doing right now and tell me, you know, how I did, but you can use the same format, thinking about introducing yourself or greeting, introducing the topic, talking about the topic in more detail, whatever your conclusion is, and then ending with a question and answer session, you can use that format, okay? You can also think about how best to present an idea, okay? So you can think about, is it best for me to put the text on the slide, or is it best for me to talk about a picture? Or is it best for the students or the participants to talk to a partner and then come back to me? Okay, you can think about that. You can practice speaking to a camera. Now, this is tricky with a computer, okay? When I first started teaching online, I found that I always looked at myself, okay? So you have to practice speaking to the camera, which is not looking at yourself, is usually not looking directly at a student or a participant. You have to practice finding the camera and talking to the camera, which seems maybe a little strange at first, but you can train yourself to do it. This is important as well, to think about the lighting, think about the setting, and think about any sounds that might interfere with your presentation, and think about how to set that so that it's very comfortable for you to present and very comfortable for your audience to listen to you. Okay? You don't want to be in a noisy room when you're giving your presentation. You don't want your dog screaming in the next room, when you're giving your presentation. You want to be as clear as you can. Okay? I would say try to include time for these conclusions at the end and any questions. So you see what I did. I put a question slide on my slides. All right? If that helps you, it will trigger you to stop talking and give your participants time to ask questions. All right? You can also think about when you're sharing your screen or when you're looking at the group as a whole. Okay? So you can think about these pieces. They take a little practice, but you can think about these pieces to make your virtual presentation really strong. If you can have tech support, somebody helping you with technology, it's not always the case, right? We can't always have someone there to help us. If you can, that would be wonderful. And it would also be wonderful to have a backup plan. So if your computer crashes, if you lose the internet, if your PowerPoint doesn't load, whatever it is, you want to make sure that you have another plan. Okay? Okay. So I'm coming to the very end of what I'd like to say to you, and then we're going to work with a partner. So my final piece is about mistakes to avoid. All right? Talking to yourself or about yourself too much. Okay? So you don't want to talk to yourself, you want to talk to your audience. All right? And you want to make sure that you're not telling too much about your personal story, your personal life. You want to talk about whatever the topic is. Okay? Later, when you meet someone or someone says, hey, I really enjoyed your presentation, then you can talk a little bit more personally. Okay? But this is a professional exchange, so you want to make sure you talk about the topic as much as you can. You don't want to read your presentation or your slides. The audience members will get bored. They will not feel engaged in the topic. You want to make sure that you're talking to them. And remember, if you're running out of time or if you're getting into a panic, remember you can say to them, we only have 2 more minutes. I'd like to go to my last point, whatever it is. Okay? I think that I have a problem with this, but try not to show too much text on the PowerPoint. Okay? You want to make sure that the audience has time to read it and to listen to you. Okay? If you put too much text on the PowerPoint, they can't pay attention to both, and you're going to lose them. All right. The other piece is don't forget to show your passion. People come to these presentations because they want to know why you're doing what you're doing, why you're doing the research that you're doing. So you can really turn that up. You can really talk about that in detail. And you can talk about that with your voice. You can show them with your excitement and your enthusiasm for whatever the topic is. Don't forget to practice. You need to practice, all right? If you've done it 100 times, you've given a similar presentation 100 times, maybe you're okay, all right? But if you haven't, then you need to remember to practice. You need to go back and check what's on your slides. Why are you saying this? What is your point? And don't forget to have a backup plan. So what's going to happen if this doesn't work? What are you going to do if this happens? Okay? So think about what you can do and what you can do in the case of, something going wrong. Okay? Okay. So I think that was it. And the last one, sorry, was not being confident. Not being confident. Okay? So yes, I know it's very nerve-wracking to present. It's very nerve-wracking to present in another language. Okay? However, just like we said before, if you're accepted to give a presentation, they are excited about you. They want to know what you have to share. The audience wants to know what you have to share. So think about how you can get over your anxiousness and try to get there and just give it your best shot. I would say for me, every time I gave a presentation, I got a little bit better. And I got a lot of positive feedback, so that helped me get better, right? So take that, use that, and let that help you to show your passion, to show what your topic is, and to be really enthusiastic about what you have to share. Okay, so any questions? How are we doing? Okay? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. Okay. So you can think about your questions. What I thought we could do next is to think about looking at one or two examples with a partner, and I'll show you what that looks like, and then just answering some questions. So I gave you a lot of information about how a presentation is structured. Now let's see if you can look at these different examples and find the structure and find how they create these different presentations. Okay, so this is just an activity sheet. Okay, you're going to try to, let's say we'll get through one, maybe two. The presentations are quite short, but you're going to try to answer these questions with your partner. So you're simply saying, how did the speaker start the presentation? What was the main message? What 2 or 3 points does the speaker make to support the main message? How did the speaker end the presentation? And do you personally think that they were successful? Okay. So these are the same questions for presentation number 2. You and your partner can choose. Okay. There's a list of presentations after that. All right. I don't know if you know this. There's a like a 3-minute thesis presentation. It's a style of presentation in 3 minutes. There's some examples of that here. Okay. Paula, you were asking about 3-minute TED Talks or TED Talks. There are a couple of 3-minute TED Talks. I kept them very short so that you and your partner have time to talk, and also that you have the time to look at how they started, how they made their main message, and how they concluded their presentation. If you want to keep going, these are a little bit longer, getting a little bit longer. You might not have time for this. okay? But you might have time after class to look at these different presentations, okay? Is everybody okay on what you're going to do? Yeah? Okay. I'm going to do two things. I'm going to share with you that document in the chat. If you're not able to download it, I will just simply put the questions in the chat for you so that you can look at them with your partner. Okay? So 1 second. Okay? So if you're not able to download it, you may copy this. Oops. I see that I just sent it to you. Okay. So here are the questions. And here is the document. Okay. If you need to share your screen with your partner, please do that. And then what you can do is try to listen to, we'll probably just get to one, but listen to one presentation and see if you can answer those questions about it. Okay? Any questions before we go to the breakout room? Are you okay? Everybody okay? Yeah? Yeah? Okay, so I'm going to open the breakout rooms. You simply need to click that link, okay? Then go with your partner. Just take a moment and see if you can answer those questions or listen to the presentation and then answer those questions with your partner, okay?
I have just a question,
Yeah,
please.
sure.
I didn't get the document, the Word document in the
Okay.
chat.
Okay, yes, it's in the chat. I'll send it one more time, okay? Yeah, I'll send it one more time for you. Oops. Okay. Do you see it? You okay? Yeah? Okay, so here we go, here we go. So you just need to click the link and go with your partner, okay? Hi. How was it?
It was very good, it was very nice. A good exchange of ideas and information.
Good job. Yeah. Did you kind of get a sense of what the format was? Even a very short presentation?
I've been studying, if I can say so, these presentation techniques for some time, and I have come across books and slides and ideas. And to tell you the truth, I have made presentations myself, and I feel that I'm not the one to do presentations because I felt so nervous. As Noemi was saying, very nice to hear Noemi, and it's difficult, but I understand and I believe that it's true. You have to practice. But you also have to lose, let me just point out this, you have to lose your shyness, you know?
If you can, yes, if you can, yeah.
May I say something,
Yeah,
Paulo?
sure, sure.
When you
Please,
have, when you are passionate and when you have something to share, that's really important to you. You don't feel that kind of shyness you're talking about. When that's for real, you say, I have to do that because this is something that is important to me and it's going to be important to the others as well.
Yeah.
Save some time for them, you know.
I believe that's true, Noemi. I believe shyness can be beaten. You can become a better person. Like MB said, if you practice, only practice can bring us perfection or near perfection.
Yeah. And I would just add that it's presentations are real, meaning they are they are imperfectly perfect, and they are with people. So for me, the most important thing is to make this connection and to share your message, whatever it is, share your passion, and really make sure that the audience walks away with whatever you're talking about or whatever you're passionate about. But that it doesn't really have to be perfect. It really just has to be you sharing your ideas in a passionate way. So whatever that looks like. Yeah.
May I share something?
Sure, sure.
Crazy. Once I was invited to make a presentation on massive online courses
Okay.
that are offered by American English
Right.
to an audience of, international BNCs. And I was a little bit worried, but then it's been like 6 years ago when I made this presentation. I still meet people and they say, do you remember that day when you said something? I wasn't there at the seminar, but I watched the video later on and I learned a lot.
Right.
So that makes me, willing to do it again.
Yeah. Thank you
Mhm.
for sharing that. That's
Yeah.
beautiful, Noemi. Yeah. Yeah. So you have the platform when you give a presentation, you have the chance, the opportunity to share whatever is on your heart or what you're passionate about, and people do remember it. People do remember it, and they remember what you say. And that's the thing I think is so important, is to have this connection. And even like Noemi said, maybe you didn't even see the people that were watching it, but they remember you because you presented it in a way that was so important to you, and you explained why it meant so much to you, and you shared that enthusiasm, and people will react to that, right? People will react to that and they will remember you. Okay? So, yeah, yeah, thank you so much. Jose, I know you need to leave. If you want to leave me your email address, if you want, I can send you the documents. Okay? Yeah. All right. So we're coming to the very end. Thank you so much for coming today. And thanks for being a part of this webinar. Yeah, I was so glad to see you this afternoon. If, like Jose, you need to leave and you want to share with me your email address, I can send you the PowerPoints and the documents from today. I will show you very quickly. Another document that I prepare for you is just like what's on the PowerPoint, okay? It has almost the same exact information, but the other pieces, I'll just get to the very end. Sorry, it's a lot. At the very end, I give you some of my resources, okay? So these are things that I looked at when I was getting ready to give this presentation. So you're welcome to take a look, to find out more about these different tips or whatever they are, and to take a look at these resources to help you. Okay? I wish you all the best as you get ready for whatever presentation it is. Like all of us said, I think it's a really important and wonderful opportunity to share what you're passionate about. If you can get over your nerves or your anxiety, but if you can do that, you will see that people respond to you and they're excited about what you're talking about. Okay? So thank you so much for coming today, and thanks for sharing your ideas, and I wish you all the best. Okay? And I hope to see you again someday.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank
Yeah.
you. See
Thank
you
you
guys.
very
Thank
much.
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye. And please leave me your email address if you want me to send you. Yeah, I see it. Okay. Bye-bye. See you again. See you. Take care. Bye, Carlos. Bye, Adele. Bye.
Bye bye.
See you. Bye.
Bye, MB.
Bye. I'll see you soon.
See
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye. Noemi, you want to say something? Go ahead. Yeah.
So you're sending